Hey guys, welcome back to this week's Marvel Monday. I wanted to say I'm sorry for missing a couple of weeks of uploads. It's a Tuesday right now, and I had filmed yesterday on Monday, but I didn't edit the video or post it at all, so I'm sorry. I've missed 2 weeks now. Like I said in that other video, I'm home for the holidays right now, so I have a lot of free time. I'm really going to try to get a whole bunch of videos filmed and edited so that way we can get back to our regular schedule of one video every Monday. So today we're going to talk about the fifth episode of the Netflix Marvel Daredevil series called World on Fire. So just a disclaimer, all thoughts are my own, so feel free to think differently. There's no right or wrong answer with these types of things. And also I'm going to try something different. I'm going to do a really short summary, like 1 to 2 sentences versus a paragraph, which is what I had been doing before. So feel free to let me know which one you guys want, or if you want me to do something totally different, like skip the summary totally, or, just let me know what you think. So yeah, let's get into it. So this episode is about how Fisk continues with his plans of ripping Hell's Kitchen apart, and then Matt and Foggy taking on a case for tenants who are gonna get evicted from the buildings that they're living in. So just going straight into the analysis with this one. I really like how Vincent D'Onofrio, I think that's how you say his last name, I'm not entirely sure, the actor who plays Wilson Fisk. I like how he portrays Fisk as this very sympathetic and empathetic character. So the first time we see him, he's in that taxi cab meeting place with Wesley, Leland, Madame Gao, and Nobu. Is that it? Yeah. So all 5 of them are together, and Fisk is apologizing for, killing Anatoly, because that just totally messes everything up. Because the Russians are in charge of controlling the area that Madame Gao is distributing the drugs in, I think. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure how they are all connected. I know Leland is in charge of the finances. I'm not entirely sure what Nobu does. Madame Gao is in charge of manufacturing and distributing drugs. And I think the Russians are taking control of these certain areas so that Madame Gao can distribute freely within those little areas. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not entirely sure. So, but with the Russians gone, because they lost one of their main leaders, it's throwing off Madame Gao's distribution, which is throwing off their finances, which is making everyone unhappy. So, basically everything is all screwed up. I like how Vincent is, he apologizes a lot, and he looks very, very sympathetic, and he's like, I'm really, really sorry. He looks very genuine and very sincere. And I feel like that's it's really interesting to have a villain do that. Normally they're just like cold-blooded, cold-hearted, emotionless, not really in the correct term of the word, but sociopathic almost. Like they don't feel anything, they don't feel any empathy for other people or anything like that. But with this one, it looks like he has heart, like he genuinely cares, and he's upset. Not just for he's upset for the fact that other people are upset. Like, yeah, a villain probably would be upset that something happened, but it would be because he's upset, because if the other people are upset, that throws off his own plans. So that's the only reason why he's upset, because his plans would get ruined. But he looks upset because Madame Gao is upset. Like, her business is being ruined, that's her source of income, she could lose everything, she could get caught, everything would just fall to pieces for her, and that's why it looks like he's sorry. He's sorry that everything could possibly be ruined for her, and that's a really, really interesting thing to portray, especially with the villain. And then just some good old-fashioned chivalry. Wilson Fisk also offers to walk her to her car. Like, he holds out his arm and he's like, may I walk you to your car? And then Madame Gao, being Madame Gao, is just like, okay, what do you want? You want something? I know. And he's just like, no, I just want to put this all behind us or whatever. But then it switches to the scene of the guy singing in the car, so I'm not entirely sure if he really did ask something from her, or if he really was just being genuinely nice, or genuinely nice to make her think he was being genuine, but in reality he did want something, he was just doing a longer way to go through it with it. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I'm gonna stick with he was genuinely being nice because he was being nice to her. I'm gonna stick with that. Another interesting thing I noticed is that throughout the whole entire warehouse exchange with all of them, Madame Gao was the only woman there. All of the rest of them were men. So it's really interesting because then they all followed her lead, and they seemed kind of intimidated by her. Like, she was the first one to speak to Fisk, she was the first one to voice her opinions, and everyone else just kind of went along with it. They all just agreed with her. No one else spoke first, so I feel like that is really interesting. She's also, no offense to the actress, she looks like she's the oldest person there, and without knowing anything else about Madame Gao, she looks like she's the oldest, so she most likely demands the most respect. So that's really interesting. And also since the intimidation factor, because like what she does, she's a drug lord or drug lordess or whatever if there's a female version of that word. She just distributes drugs. Yeah, she's probably like killed people or hurt people and stuff, but she's not like an assassin like Nobu or like just plain old scary like Fisk. You know, she's probably like one of the least intimidating, but for some reason they all seem intimidated by her. And also, throughout that exchange, Fisk's gaze is pretty much only focused on Madame Gao. That's like the only person he looks at. I mean, he looks to like Nobu and Leland and, you know, Wesley occasionally, but primarily his gaze is focused on Madame Gao. And that's when we see the sympathy, and he's just like, you know, I'm really, really sorry. You know, that's where that whole thing happens. In regards to the cinematography, there was one really cool shot after this whole entire warehouse situation with the Chinese? The Chinese guy in the car, then the two Russians in the front, and the camera stationed like in the middle of the inside of the car, and it's just kind of swiveling back and forth. I feel like that was really cool because I want to know how they filmed it. Like if it was kind of like a GoPro type thing. Obviously they had it mounted on something, so then it just like swiveled around, but stayed in that one spot, so it just rotated. So it was really cool because then we got to see the Chinese guy, then it rotated and we saw the Russians in the car and back to the Chinese. The car stopped, kind of panned around, saw the Russians leave the car, saw the place where they go in, and then it pans all the way around, and then we see Matt standing in the corner looking like a creepy person, and it swivels back around. Matt's gone, swivels around again, and then the Russians come out, and then Matt jumps out of nowhere and attacks them. So I feel like that was really cool, especially since it was all done in like one shot. When we see the Chinese guy, that whole entire thing till like after the first few hits of the first fight, all of that is just one shot. So I feel like that was really cool. And for some reason, the song that the guy is singing always just gets stuck in my head whenever I hear it. I don't know why, and I don't know what the song is. I'm assuming it's in Chinese. I'm not entirely sure, but the melody just gets stuck in my head. And then another cool shot I really liked was when Matt was in the precinct after that other Russian guy got killed. It's just like him standing in the middle and then in slow motion while all the other officers are like running around. Some people are on the radio, some people are, you know, it's just like chaos. So I really liked that. I feel like that was just a really cool shot. The fight scenes are good. Like the first one, Matt manages to get the guy's guns from them, and then he takes out the cartridges or magazines or whatever they are and just starts throwing them at them. So it felt like that was pretty clever, but he does a lot of flips and twists and elaborate things like that throughout this episode. Like, when he attacks the cop, he, like, flips off of the dumpster and, like, lands in front of him and does, like, this 360 roundhouse kick flip thing. Like, it was just really extra and totally unnecessary. So, I mean, it looks really cool. Don't get me wrong, it looks really cool. I just feel like it's impractical and illogical and wasting energy, quite frankly, because if you use something like that in the beginning of a fight, who knows how much energy it took to do that. You lost that energy they could have used later on in the fight, you know. Yeah, I mean, other than that, fight scenes are fine. There wasn't anything extraordinary other than the flips and things, so nothing really sticks into my head other than that. And guess who I'm going to talk about? Foggy! Favorite character, back at it again. And basically everything he says in this episode is amazing. I feel like they focused a lot more on him in this episode, and I'm really, really thankful for that, because we got to see a little more of Foggy. Like, we learned how he pranked Matt in college by moving all of the furniture out of the room, so when Matt walked in, he thought he was in the totally wrong room. Which was kind of mean, it was kind of funny at the same time. Little sweet moments between Foggy and Karen, and we'll get to that later. And then when Foggy, you see how we haven't really seen Foggy and Matt do we've seen them do some attorney stuff, but not really to like see how good they are. Like, we learned, what was it, the third episode when Wesley first shows up or something, we learned that they graduated with honors from Columbia University, which is a fairly prestigious university. And to graduate with honors means you got pretty good grades. So they're obviously pretty smart and they worked really hard. But we haven't really seen, like, proof that they are as good as they claim to be. It was nice to see Foggy, like, have a really good argument, seemingly off the bat when he meets with Marcy. Because, I mean, they were just standing by the front desk. Foggy's probably prepared to, pull out files and, like, make a full-blown case with, like, facts and things like that, with specifics. But Marcy didn't give him any of that. She was just like, no, we'll be finished before the elevator stops. There's just no point in leaving. But then Foggy just, like, rips into her. And he just, like, tears her apart. And he has this really strong argument. And Marcy's just kind of like, wow, okay. And Karen's, like, the same way. She's like, oh, wow, Foggy's good. And so we see that Foggy is at least a pretty good arguer, especially with coming stuff seemingly off the bat. Who knows, he probably planned it beforehand, but still, it seems like a really good, strong argument to have, especially if it came up on a whim. So I feel like he's, we saw a little bit more of his lawyer side, and I really liked that. And plus, he's just really funny. Like, when he's talking with Matt and Karen, when he's like, we have to go back to the law firm. No, I don't want to go. And they're talking about sharks feeding and stuff. And Mac's like, don't splash around, it attracts them. And Foggy's like, you're so funny. I just love that whole scene. And then a really cool visual thing I noticed was that when Matt shows up at the police precinct or whatever, when he's talking to Brett Mahoney, and he's like, I want some information on, what was his name? Armand Tully or something, the man who's in charge of all the apartments. He sits down at the waiting chair bench thing or whatever, and there's a sign behind him that says, what was it? I wrote it down. You don't have to reveal your identity to help solve violent crimes. Is it irony? I feel like it's irony, or like a parallel. Not quite irony. I think it's a parallel. Because obviously Matt has a secret identity of the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. That's what he's known by now, but later he'll be called Daredevil. So he has this identity as the Devil of Hell's Kitchen, and no one knows who the Devil of Hell's Kitchen really is. So, and he's stopping violent crimes, or at least making valiant attempts to stop it. So I feel like that was pretty cool. Just to have that poster there and have him sitting there, that was, a nice parallel. One thing I noticed, kind of going back to when Foggy and Marcy and Karen are talking, they're just starting their argument, and Marcy's like, oh yeah, because the law is always about the truth. And she just says it with, like, this regret and, resignation. She doesn't want to admit that the law isn't about the truth. So it seems to imply, since she doesn't like saying that, it means that she believed in something different. So it's possible that, like, when she was in law school, or, like, beforehand, she thought that the law was about the truth. Like, law equals truth. They're the same thing. You change one, you change the other, they're the same thing. So, then, like, maybe when she joined the law firm, or when she, progressed through school or whatever, she realized that, oh, people have that assumption that the law equals the truth, so if you change the law, you change the truth. It also invalidates the statement that law equals truth, because obviously they can twist things around. So truth isn't necessarily the real truth, it's a different version of it. It's a made-up version of it, like they crafted the law to equal a false truth. I don't know if that made any sense whatsoever. That sounded really, really abstract, and I am really sorry. I hope my main point came across. Basically, law equals truth. You change one of them, you change the other. So if you change the law, you ultimately change the truth. That's essentially what I'm trying to say. I should have just said that in the beginning. I'm sorry. I don't know why I had to go into this weird math-like theorem type thing. I'm really sorry. And my fangirl coming out, Foggy and Karen have that cute little dinner in Mrs. Cardenas' apartment. She made the little dinner, she had everything all set up, and then she leaves so then they could have some alone time. I feel like that was really cute. Like, even Mrs. Cardenas ships Foggy and Karen, and it's just... the two of them belong together. They really do. They are so flippin' cute together. They're so cute. They work so well together. I want them to be together. They're so cute. Ugh. Okay, moving on before I ramble about that forever. We also see another dinner with Fisk and Vanessa. Fisk buys out the restaurant, so he and Vanessa are the only customers there. And they also get an unobstructed view of all the explosions that happen towards the end. And to be honest, I don't get the romanticism. I don't know what word I'm supposed to use. I don't get the romantic aspect of buying out a restaurant, or buying out the whole restaurant for a date thing. I don't get that. Maybe it's just me. I know I could be a little paranoid, but I would probably ditch the guy if he bought out a whole restaurant and the two of us were the only customers there. I would probably leave. I would be very, very uncomfortable. I would not want to be left alone in a public place like that, especially if I didn't know the guy very well. It's just kind of awkward to have this restaurant reserved just for the two of you. So everyone working the restaurant knows that it's just the two of you. So they could be like watching you because they don't have anything else to do, and it's just kind of like and then Fisk knows that Vanessa has a gun in her purse and then asks her to hand it over. Like, this is like, what, her second date with him, and like I said, maybe I'm just being paranoid, but if I had a weapon like that and the guy was telling me to hand it over and we were in a restaurant alone, I'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. No. And then she even just kind of said, not like that, but she's just like, I know how dangerous you are. Yeah, that's why I brought a gun to a dinner date, because you're dangerous. It like implies that something bad could happen. She wants to be able to defend herself. Go for her, go Vanessa. But then she handed over the gun to him and like didn't protest and argue at all when he showed her they watched the explosions happen. She could have gone to the police or like called or did something, but no, she didn't. And no offense, but she kind of lost my respect for her in this episode because of that. I just don't like that. People think buying out a restaurant is romantic. Would you guys be thrilled if someone did that for you? Let me know in the comments. Would you be happy if someone did that? Maybe it's just me, but I want to know. Let me know. One thing I thought was entertaining, this is a shout out from my dad. So shout out to you, Dad. When Vladimir is telling one of his guys to, get everything ready because they're going to go attack Fisk after he finds out that he was the one that killed Anatoly. Vladimir is just like, get everyone, get all of the weapons, everything, we're gonna go and attack. And the guy was just kind of like, all of it? And then Vladimir goes, oh! And he like screams at him, and the guy's like, okay, fine, I'll get everything. And it reminds me of, I don't remember what movie it is, but it's with Gary Oldman, and something is happening where they're getting all of these like men and weapons together so they could go, I think, storm a building or something. I'm not entirely sure. And then Gary Oldman is having a very, very similar conversation with another guy, and he's like, get everyone together. I want everyone. And the other guy just goes, everyone? And then Gary Oldman goes, everyone! I don't know the name of the movie, but it just reminded me of that because it's very, very similar. So shout out to you, Dad. I only know that quote because of you, because I've never seen the movie, but he quotes it all the time. So shout out to you. Maybe the writers did that on purpose. Maybe they liked the movie. They're like, hey, we could do this. So that's kind of cool. Another cool thing I liked was that Madame Gao's workers are all blind. It's because she made them that way, but I feel like it's really symbolic because a lot of the time lower level workers who are employed by bad guys or villains or something, they don't really know what they're doing or know completely the impact that their work is going to have. Metaphorically, they're blind to what they're doing. So to have Madame Gao's workers be physically blind means that they could also be metaphorically blind to what they're doing. Maybe they know what's going on. They're just like physically blind, so they, flip-flop. So instead of seeing what they're doing and then not knowing what they're doing versus knowing what they're doing and not seeing. So I feel like that's a really cool contrast, parallel, paradox to have. I don't know what term or word to use for that. And then we also see a couple new parallels between Matt and Fisk in this episode. It's like they're both trying to fix Hell's Kitchen. They both believe what they're doing is right and it's for the better good, and they're also willing to hurt people to get their way and to achieve their goals. Another nerd thing, they're both Slytherins. It's just really interesting because then if you just look at those two things, and it's interesting because if you look at those things like that, the only differences between Matt and Fisk are that Fisk is willing to kill people and hurt innocents to achieve his goal, whereas Matt is not willing to hurt innocents and he's not willing to kill. So I feel like that's interesting because then if you look at it, those are the only two differences between them. So then you kind of start to wonder like, oh, maybe Fisk is justified in what he's doing. You know, maybe he's not entirely wrong. It seems like a more grounded, more realistic, more believable villain. And plus the fact that they made the antagonist and the protagonist very, very similar. They have very similar goals and similar methods of achievement. I feel like that's really interesting. And then at the end, Matt attacks Vladimir and, you know, starts to beat him up. He does the cheesy, you know, this is for Claire, and he's just about to land this, you know, you could tell it's going to be a really hard punch, like it's probably going to knock Vladimir out, but then the police show up and Matt just kind of stops. So I feel like that is really cool because, you know, Claire had said earlier in the episode that she didn't want to be with Matt because she felt like he was becoming what he was trying to stop. Like, she felt like he was becoming this bad guy who was like, hurting people and just not being a good guy anymore. So she didn't want to be with someone who was like that. So if Claire were with Matt, you know, she would stop Matt from hitting Vladimir. By Matt saying, you know, this is for Claire and then not getting to hit Vladimir is just a nice little parallel to have. And it's the police that stop them too, so the people who enforce the law. So it can't quite, you know, explain why, but I hope you guys can see that there's some type of parallel there. So final thoughts. I liked the episode. I think it's good. There's nothing super spectacular in it that I really, really liked. There's nothing super horrible that I hated other than Vanessa's action with Fisk. Other than that, I feel like the episode is pretty good. The writing is good. I liked the parallels that they made. They made a lot of parallels in this episode, I feel like. So I liked that. I also discovered that the writers and the directors change with each episode. So that's why each episode I felt like has been pretty different. It's because it's like written and directed by like different people. So I feel like that is really cool. What do you guys think about that? Did you guys know that? Is there any episodes you like? You know, let me know below, like, what you liked about the episode, what you thought about it, what you thought about the writing, things like that. And then let me know about the whole entire buying out a restaurant for a dinner thing. Is it just me, or does no one else like it when people do that? Or would you be very flattered if someone bought out a restaurant for the two of you to have a date? And let me know below. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell notification. That way you get notified every time you post a video. Bye, guys. Shout out to you, Maddie. When we first saw this episode, we were like screaming at her laptop because we were so upset because Foggy left and was like gonna go help people, and we're like, are they gonna kill Foggy? They better not kill Foggy. And we were so mad and we were so concerned, and we're like, what on earth? And we had shipped Foggy and Karen so hard, and then like there was an almost kiss moment possibly, or like this really sweet romantic moment, and then the explosion happened and totally ruined all of that, and we were so mad. We were like literally screaming at our laptop going, no! So shout out to you, Maddie. As you can tell, I have caught up on my sleep. I started making this series when I was sleep deprived. It was getting towards the end of the quarter, so now I have a lot more energy and I'm a lot more psycho, and I am really sorry. Now I'm back on topic again. This is also like the 4th or 5th video that I filmed. I like had all these other film videos, and I would like say something and then I would like totally mess up, and I'm like, nah, so I'd go through and delete the video. I